back again. This is Emil Muck's Take Out the Retake. The Retake. We put out a show during our standard time, which is at 2 p.m. Pacific Live. And we thought, oh, yeah, we're just going to do it. And we actually start at 1:45, 1:50 because we can, because we just get anxious. And what do you know? I had the wrong microphone. I had the wrong speaker. Everything was wrong. And then I was playing something, like I was playing a soundbite, and there was like nothing. It was like regular listeners would say, "Were you meditating there?" No, I was not meditating. Anyway, this is now officially episode 260.2. We'll call it 260.2. Emil Muck's Take Out my takes on all things considerable, and there are a lot of things to consider today here on the 8th of March. Let me just begin, since this is no lagniappe, this something extra, this is just the show. We're going to talk about Biden's ban on Russian oil. I guess he read my column in the Aldef blog. Actually, it was a vast chorus of people saying, oh, let's get those better sanctions out there. So we're going to talk about that, going to sort of slightly dissect Biden's speech. We're going to talk about Ukraine and Selma, since we're coming off of Bloody Sunday, the Bloody Sunday weekend, 57 years. We played around with Kamala Harris yesterday in the speech she gave, but I'm going to talk about this other speech that you should hear that really ties Ukraine and Selma, Ukraine and America today. I mean, it's the same existential democracy kind of thing. So I'll play that. Don't say gay in FLA. It passed in Florida. So if you're K through 3, and we're not even going to bring it up anyway, you can't do it legally. It would be illegal if you did, if you were just a curious kindergartner through 3rd grade. And look, 3rd graders are smart these days. But the problem is when it impacts all students and teachers in all public schools. People can challenge the law, but you know that if someone did, then there will be an amendment or a new bill saying, hey, let's just make it K through 12. We're going down a slippery slope that we don't want to go down. I'll talk about Don't Say Gay in FLA. It's Women's Day, International Women's Day. Hats off to the women out there. Talk about that, and talk about the New Yorker and their article on Lowell High School, my alma mater. And if you are a public school student who, you look at these kind of exclusive magnet schools as your way out, as your opportunity, we'll talk about that, because what's happening at Lowell is going to happen to every magnet throughout the country. And it's going to be unfortunate for kids like I was, a kid from an underprivileged family that had no money, that could barely make the rent, and there was no way we could afford any private school. And right now, private school in San Francisco, if I wanted to go to the same private school as Eileen Gu, the Olympic star high schooler from San Francisco, University High, I'd pay something like $60,000 a year. I don't think my father would have made that in 2 years. Anyway, so we'll talk about all that. But first, let me just say this. This is the 8th. Maybe you're listening to this on the 9th. Go to the Aldef blog, or not the Aldef blog, but the Aldef website, Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund website, and think about buying a ticket to the March 9th, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, the ALDEF Lunar New Year celebration. They're going to celebrate the Year of the Tiger with their annual Justice in Action Awards. And they're going to honor Thomas S. Kim, who's the chief legal officer and company secretary at Thomson Reuters. God, they are survivors, Thomson Reuters. You know, I mean, throughout everything that's happened in the news business in the last, say, 20 years, Thomson Reuters still a valued news source, wire service. So Thomas Kim is going to be honored, but also Kal Penn, the actor and the author. That's right. Kumar will be honored. He just came out with a new memoir. Also announced that he was married. Also announced that he's gay. He came out. So many courageous things he has said in his memoir. He worked at the White House and did his time as, I guess not really an activist, but really more of he was part of the system. He wanted to experience what it's like to be in the system. So he's got a lot of interesting things to say. He's not just Kumar. And I don't know what he did with Harold. And this is your chance to contribute to ALDEF. It's a this year's gala, I haven't really been paying attention, but it's a hybrid event. So there's an in-person reception at the Lighthouse at Chelsea Piers, and then there's a live stream program. So wherever you are in the world, you can click and register. Register by going to ALDEF, the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, and go to their virtual registration form. And there's you can donate any amount. It's virtual for those of you who are not. I wasn't going to go because I thought it was only live, but it's a virtual thing. So check it out. Go to the ALDEF blog. It's tomorrow. I know, the Emil Amok's Takeout starts at 2 p.m. Pacific Live, but you should definitely check it out. I love ALDEF and Executive Director Margaret Fung, everything she's doing over there, with ALDEF. This is always a key event. I've been to several during my time writing for ALDEF, coming from California, and I've been to most of the hybrid ones. So this is a hybrid one. So check it out. Check it out. The ALDEF Justice in Action Awards. It's hybrid, so it'll be live. Kal Penn is an honoree. That's reason to be there live. And then there's also going to be a virtual component where you can just log in from anywhere in the world. Go to aldef.org and check out the link there. And I'll try to put the link to my website a little later, but just go to aldef.org and check out the registration. So, I'm glad that I did this again, because the actual event is tomorrow. It's Wednesday. If you've been lagging, don't. You can do it. You can do it online. So anyway, this is Emil Amok's Takeout. We asked the question. We like to ask the question. WDAAAT. What does an Asian American think? Because they never ask us. And there are 23 million of us now that they should. So I do this micro talk show because, usually talk shows are like 3 hours on the radio, 2 hours, 4 hours, some all night long on the radio. This is a micro talk show. So we concentrate our thoughts into, like one segment, no commercials, just me talking. And if you're on Facebook now, Facebook at emilguillermo.media, you can chat. You can say, hey, what are you doing? Or what is it? What is the ALDEF? The ALDEF registration? But it's two-way. It can be two-way, but it's the micro talk show of the AAPI, and the AAX is my naming convention for what we are. And if you're neither of those, maybe you're just an ALL, all's the rest of us. It applies. It applies. So today, on episode 260.1 or 260.2, we're going to talk about Biden's ban on Russian oil. I've been talking about this for the last couple days, actually since last week, because how much of the bombing or the aerial attacks can we take as Americans? At some point, you have these sanctions that you put on Russia, and they're working. But the real effect will be long term, like maybe a month. I mean, Biden said so himself. But if we want to make a difference now, we needed to apply those sanctions on energy and on wheat, on ag. But now apparently ag is still off the table. So if you're a wheat lover, you're safe. You don't have to hoard your wheat. Those wheat sales will continue. But oil and gas, today, Joe Biden said, he said the magic words.
We're banning all imports of Russian oil and gas and energy. That means Russian oil will no longer be acceptable at U.S. ports, and the American people will deal another powerful blow to Putin's war machine.
And, he had to do it. He had to do it. I mean, it made no sense. There was a chorus of op-eds from both sides. The Wall Street Journal was saying, hey, we got to get tough. And, liberals were doing it. I was doing it on my ALDEF blog, on my columns. I said, how much longer? I mean, I know we don't want World War III, but how much longer can we endure World War II and a half? So we're doing it unilaterally because, let's see, here's what Biden said.
We made this decision in close consultation with our allies and our partners around the world, particularly in Europe, because a united response to Putin's aggression has been my overriding focus, to keep all NATO and all of the EU and our allies totally united. We're moving forward with this ban, understanding that many of our European allies and partners may not be in a position to join us. The United States produces far more oil domestically than all the European countries combined. In fact, we're a net exporter of energy. So we can take this step when others cannot. But we're working closely with Europe and our partners to develop a long-term strategy to reduce their dependence on Russian energy as well.
And so it's not perfect, because who knows what the allies are going to do. But the United States is going to go this step, and it's a good step. It's a treacherous one somewhat for Biden, even though everyone from both sides of the aisle are saying, go ahead, do it. But of course, when it comes to election time, he's going to get some blowback from people who say, oh, look at what Biden did. He raised the price of gas. He raised the He knew you were suffering at the pumps. He knew you were suffering from inflation. Look at what Biden and the Democrats did. You will watch in November. The Republicans will disavow any knowledge that this was a bipartisan effort, because the world was looking at what was going on in Ukraine, and we could not stand by and do nothing. We could not stand by and do the most we could do. And believe me, this is still not the absolute most, but it is the most that we could do without getting into World War III. And no one wants to do that.
To reassure them, those countries bordering Russia, NATO countries, that we will keep our NATO commitment, the sacred commitment of Article 5. The Vice President Harris is going to be traveling to meet with our allies in Poland and Romania later this week as well. I've made it clear the United States will share in the responsibility of caring for the refugees, so the costs do not fall entirely on the European countries bordering Ukraine. And yesterday I spoke with my counterparts in France, Germany, and the United Kingdom about Russia's escalating violence against Ukraine and the steps that we're going to take together with our allies and partners around the world to respond to this aggression.
So, Biden's trying to couch this in, look, we're all together. I'm going to do what I need to do here because this is the right thing. And now the question is, how do we make it easy on Americans who are going to suffer? I mean, the price is going to go high. It's already, when I first wrote my columns on paying at the pump for peace, I was paying $5. And now in California, it's like $6 and above in some stations. And we're the highest in the nation. Of course, we have gas taxes on top of all the other costs. But here's the thing, we can afford to do it if we know it's temporary, and if we know that this is a way that maybe we can get Putin to listen.
We are enforcing the most significant package of economic sanctions in history, and it's causing significant damage to Russia's economy. It has caused Russian economy to, frankly, crater. The Russian ruble is now down to 50%, by 50% since Putin's announced his war. 1 ruble is now worth less than 1 American penny.
Oh, yeah. And we know how much we revere the penny in the United States, right? I mean, I kind of like that little brown coin. But, all right, so it's impacting Russia. We're doing all these things. We're going after the oligarchs. And so, but here's the part of the speech where he's talking to you. And unfortunately, when Biden gave the speech, you probably weren't listening to it. But this is what he's telling you.
The decision today is not without cost here at home. Putin's war is already hurting American families at the gas pump. Since Putin began his military buildup on Ukrainian borders, just since then, the price of the gas at the pump in America went up 75 cents. And with this action, it's going to go up further. I'm going to do everything I can to minimize Putin's price hike here at home. In coordination with our partners, we've already announced that we're releasing 60 million barrels of oil from our joint oil reserves. Half of that, 30 million, is coming from the United States. And we're taking steps to ensure the reliable supply of global energy. We're also going to keep working with every tool at our disposal to protect American families and businesses.
Okay, so basically he's saying we're going to pump more. We're going to pump more. We're going to try to even out the fact that we're cutting out the Russian purchases. But the United States has a lot more reserve than we think. Plus, if you look at California, right, the big gas guzzler, California, where do we get our oil? 20% from Ecuador. So more Latin American countries, not just Venezuela. Ecuador is 20% of California's supply. Then, of course, you're talking about Iran, and we're talking about Saudi Arabia. We're talking about some of the not so nice players out there in the world. That's who we have to deal with. But compared to Russia, I think it's worth it. So this is Biden's speech. Here, let's go more into it. He says,
This is a time when we have to do our part and make sure we're not taking advantage. Look, let me be clear about two other points. First, it's simply not true that my administration or policies are holding back domestic energy production. That's simply not true. Even amid the pandemic, companies in the United States pumped more oil during my first year in office than they did during my predecessor's first year. We're approaching a record levels of oil and gas production in the United States, and we're on track to set a record oil production next year. In the United States, 90% of onshore oil production takes place on land that isn't owned by the federal government. And of the remaining 10% that occurs on federal land, the oil and gas industry has millions of acres leased. They have 9,000 permits to drill now. They could be drilling right now, yesterday, last week, last year. They have 9,000 to drill onshore that are already approved. So let me be clear. They are not using them for production now. That's their decision. These are the facts. We should be honest about the facts.
all right, now this is the only thing that makes me a little uneasy. Because if you've ever been to the coast and you see the pumping, I think it's really that's kind of an obscene thing to be sitting on the beach and looking at the rigs doing their thing. It's just part of the landscape, and it's ugly and it's bad on the environment. So if you're a green person at heart, this is a little tough to take because it means America's going to be pumping more. It's part of the sacrifice. So it's not necessarily the green approach. The green approach would be, hey, let's go electric, go hybrid, let's get off our oil dependency. And I think ultimately that's the long-term goal. But no one was figuring that Putin was going to come hard and heavy into Ukraine. It was going to last 2 weeks, and we were going to need to do something really serious to try to stop him. But that's where we are now. And even though it's harmful in terms of our overall approach to climate change, our overall approach, our green environmental approach to fight the evil of Putin, I think it's the price we pay. But notice how when that UN climate change report came out last week, how that got very little play. I mean, I might have seen it, got a little play, not much on television, a little bit in the newspapers, but ultimately it was just a UN report came and went, and oh, are we a couple more degrees up or down, or are we already screwed? I mean, that's kind of the attitude now. And I think that we got to worry about fossil fuels, and not buying from Russia means, well, who's going to buy our share once we say no? Will it be China? And if you've ever been to China, you know the kind of pollution that that country emits. So, more on Biden.
That'll mean tyrants like Putin won't be able to use fossil fuels as weapons against other nations. And it will make America a world leader, manufacturing and exporting clean energy technologies of the future to countries all around the world. This is the goal we should be racing toward.
Okay, so that's kind of like a motivating factor. We're going to cut our dependence on Russian imports because we're going to move toward clean technology. Let's hope that's more than an empty promise.
Over the last 2 weeks, Ukrainian people have inspired the world, and I mean that in a literal sense. They've inspired the world with their bravery, their patriotism, their defiant determination to live free. Putin's war has caused enormous suffering and needless loss of life of women, children, everyone in Ukraine.
And he's got to say that. Putin's war. It's Putin's war. Remember the misery. The misery come November. It's Putin's war. Just like in 2016, Trump was Putin's buddy. Well, remember, when it comes to the elections, midterms, Putin's war. It was Putin's war. So here's more Biden.
So we're going to continue to support the brave Ukrainian people as they fight for their country. And I call on Congress to pass the $12 billion Ukraine assistance package that I have asked them for of late. Ukrainian people are demonstrating by their physical courage that they're not about to just let Putin take what he wants. That's clear. They'll defend their freedom, their democracy, their lives. And we're going to keep providing security assistance, economic assistance, and humanitarian assistance. We're going to support them against tyranny, oppression, violent acts of subjugation.
Remember that. This is a stand for democracy. And really, you see how he snuck in? Hey, we're going to call on Congress pass $12 billion Ukrainian assistance package, which is a huge package. So this is how he closes.
When the history of this war is written, Putin's war on Ukraine will have left Russia weaker and the rest of the world stronger. And God bless all those heroes in Ukraine.
And that's Biden. That's how Biden ended. You know, and we won't know really how the sanctions will affect Russia immediately, although this is something that Russia should understand, because the amount of the number of barrels of oil, it's going to be substantial. But who's going to pick up the slack? China? And then, of course, we know that there are going to be some Western countries in Europe that are still dependent and won't be joining in with us on this because they still have that dependence on Russian oil. But as I said, it's going to take some rejiggering in terms of where the flow of oil is going to come from. Like I said, California, where I am, we get 20% of our oil from Ecuador, 20% from Saudi Arabia, 20% from Iran. And that seems to be where the people who are checking the oil flows are looking. So we advocated for pay for peace at the pump. It could go as high as $6, $7, maybe more. It could be temporary. But when you look at pictures at night of what's going on in Ukraine, and you feel helpless, well, you're not helpless. You can pay at the pump. You can make things happen at the pump. And you can support democracy. So here's one thing. I mentioned this yesterday when I talked about Kamala Harris. I know I like Kamala Harris, the vice president. She's going to go and, you heard Biden say that she's going to go to the European countries and talk about this, what the sanctions on energy are going to mean and how the allies are still together. So she's doing a lot of this stuff for the president. She went to Selma on Sunday and she spoke. Good speaker, Kamala Harris. But the speaker who made an impact on me when I watched the entire ceremony from it was by an hour. And you could only find it on, if you saw it on C-SPAN or you got it on YouTube. But the entire program is over an hour. And there was one speaker who was able to tie Ukraine and the United States. And that has to happen if we're to really understand that their fight over there is like our fight over here for voting rights. Because that's one of the things on Sunday that Biden kind of slipped in with a statement. He had a printed statement that he released saying that his administration would seek the passage of the two voting rights bills that were nixed in January. Couldn't really get out of the box because of the filibuster. And so it's on again. There was Kamala Harris speaking on their behalf, fighting for voting rights, trying to get people to remember Selma. But as I said, there was this one speaker. She was like the first or second speaker, Latasha Brown of Black Voters Matter. She made the connection between Ukraine and voting rights in the United States. It's the same existential fight for democracy. Oop. Gotta do this. Here's Latasha Brown.
The bottom line is right now, in this moment, there are brothers and sisters in the Ukraine that are fighting for their lives, that we're saying that they literally are standing and fighting for their lives and for democracy.
Now this is Latasha Brown. Black Voters Matter. You know, you don't see this kind of fire from Kamala Harris. I know Kamala Harris she's trying to be cool. She's vice president, and I understand her role. But this woman, Latasha Brown, she put it together.
I also want to let you know that the very same source, while we're not doing the same thing, and in no way I want to undermine what is happening with them right now, but the same source, and thinking that they're not self-determined, that they shouldn't be able to select and choose the folks that they want that govern them, the kind of governance, and to be self-determined, that same kind of spirit is here in the U.S. It is the same spirit that is under the voter suppression. And we have to recognize and connect the two. So at the end of the day, part of what we're doing is not just about the vote, y'all. It's literally around how do we stand in the fullness of our power as God has created us, that we are deserving of literally creating the kind of nation we desire and deserve. We are literally empowered to be self-determined, but it's going to require us having a vision.
And there was the vision. You got to see us linked to Ukraine. You got to see the fight for voting rights as linked to the fight that Ukraine is having. This is our existential democratic moment too. Our existential democracy moment. And, you know, she was careful. She said, look, I'm not trying to take anything away from the people in Ukraine. But what they're doing over there and what we're fighting for here, same thing. Our right to self-determination. Here, we're a little far more progressed as a democracy, but self-determination certainly happens at the ballot box. If you are denied the right to vote, if you are prevented from voting, if you are not helped in every single possible way to vote for the candidate of your choice. So there was Latasha Brown. Black Voters Matter. I heard that. I said, that's the message I came to hear at Selma. That was it. And yeah, it's sad. John Lewis, other activists got beaten up on Bloody Sunday. But if you saw that LBJ documentary, you know, that was leverage. That was leverage that President Lyndon Baines Johnson used. He was a white Southerner who knew how to use power, and he used the leverage of those marches in Selma to get the 65 Voting Rights Act passed. And yeah, if you haven't seen that CNN documentary, by the way, you should. LBJ, Triumph and Tragedy. It just sort of puts civil rights, it puts the Voting Rights Act, it puts it all in perspective. And that, of course, was part one of LBJ's tenure, right? The Great Society. And he did all these things for education, labor, on and on, fair housing. And then came part two, the tragedy, Vietnam. And isn't that where we find ourselves also here, right? With Ukraine, fighting for democracy, fighting for the idea of, well, they need to be free. How do we do it peacefully? How do we do it without starting World War III? How do we do it and do it in a way before Putin can march on from not just Ukraine, but to neighboring states, the Baltic states? If indeed that is Putin's ultimate goal, to go beyond Ukraine and to rebuild the Soviet Empire. And you see, what's standing in his way is, do we join NATO? Do we go it alone? Do we put boots on the ground? What a balancing act. And so far, I think especially today, coming on strong with the sanctions, coming on strong with the ban on Russian imports, I think, or Russian oil and gas purchases, I think Biden is trying to be careful and strong. Let's see how it works, because there could be a political price that he's got to be calculating in his head as well. Anyway, that's the Russian oil ban, and you get mad, but I don't know. Once you understand, when you see pictures, remember it was pictures of Bloody Sunday that people saw beamed back on television news, and people saw that and they said, this can't be happening to our country. And they were called to march, and people from all over the country went to Selma to march. And similarly, today, we're watching on the news, we're watching Russia shell indiscriminately civilians. We see women and children killed. Front page of yesterday's New York Times, Lindsay Adario's photo of the Ukrainian mother and her young children lying on the ground, killed by artillery shell. I think that's what makes what Biden did today okay for now. We'll pay at the pump for peace. So, a couple other things. I wanted to talk about the Don't Say Gay bill. It passed in Florida. Unbelievable. I keep thinking that how can this be? In the 80s, I was a reporter in San Francisco at the NBC affiliate, and it must have been a slow night. They sent me to Fremont, California, where there was an issue before the city council. A group of neighbors wanted to change the name of their street from Gay Court to something else. I was kind of a smartass back then. I said, well, man, maybe they wanted to change it to Liberace Court. Maybe they want to change it to Candelabra Court. Liberace Court. It has a ring to it. But the thought that in the 80s in liberal San Francisco, that out in the suburbs, I guess, wasn't too liberal. There were people actually saying, I don't want to be called gay court. Father had his son out there saying, I don't want to give him a complex. He's not going to have a complex. He lives in a nice suburban house. I don't know what happened to that issue. I don't know if gay court is still in Fremont. But I just remember, God, I can't believe I'm doing a story on that. And now here we are, 2022. We're talking about a state in Florida that has banned talking about LGBTQ, talk about in an innocent way, not necessarily to study, but you just can't mention it. You know, when you're in second or third grade, you're 7, you're 8. 7, 8-year-olds are smarter now than they were in my day. And given all the media and all the things they're exposed to, they're going to have questions, or all the social situations. They're going to see, Johnny's mom and Johnny's other mom. Stepmom? No. They're together. They're married. They're husband and wife. Oh, we're not talking about that, son. So the kid goes to school and asks his teachers, hey, I saw this about my friend who's in the other classroom down the hallway. And sorry, we can't talk about that. What are we doing? This is 2022. So the Senate in Florida passed it, and they are going to get it signed into law. I mean, Ron DeSantis, who is a culture war fiend, is running for president. And this is just a thing that polarizes people and make people say, oh, that man has a good idea. We don't have to talk about gays. I just think that you start putting a ban K through 3, whenever someone talks about it, say 3 through 12 in the public school system, and it'll be an issue. There'll be a move for an amendment or a new bill, a new ban, and then you can't say the word gay anywhere. You can't bring it up. And when you can't bring it up, then it seems that you're following a standard pattern of behavior where you look at the history books and you don't see hardly any Asians. I never saw any Filipinos in any of my history books. No one talks about us. And what you have is a perpetuation of 18th, 19th century ignorance in 2022. It just seems ridiculous that we're talking about this, but we mentioned Florida, and you should know there are at least 10 or 11 other states who are thinking about similar laws. So it's worth speaking out against the Don't Say Gay in FLA. I don't see how it works. Frankly, I think that if you use the old Emil Amok substitution method, just substitute anything for gay, how does that work? How does that make sense in a diverse democracy like America, where you're purposely keeping information, keeping people from knowing and acknowledging what's true in life? I mean, no one is talking about teaching a class. No one is talking about reading obscene, pornographic anything. I mean, this is just humanity. And to this day, people are still scared. Hard to believe. All right, it's Women's Day, International Women's Day. I wanted to just mention a couple things. Just because it's International Women's Month, this is the day. I talk about my father a lot in my shows, my one-man shows that I do. I'm preparing one now for April. And I'm going to try to write in some stuff about my mom that I have because I forget her. Too often I just forget my mom. But who is the person that I have when the chips are down? Who's the person you turn to? Who's the person you yell out and call for? Who's the person you need? It's mom. That was me. I was a mommy, I need you guy. I even made up a song. Mommy, I need you. She knows what I meant. She came running. She never failed me. She never failed me. And when you talk about International Women's Day, I was thinking about this. I mean, who do you honor on International Women's Day? Well, of course, right now, you got to honor all those women in Ukraine. You got to honor all those women who are doing right by the family, taking care of their kids, separating from their spouses, their husbands, who go back to the country or stay to fight. You got to honor the Ukrainian women. But then after that, you come close to home and you think internationally. Your immigrant mom, your mom from the Philippines, your mom who survived the Japanese occupation of Manila, your mom who came to America without knowing a soul, who banded together with other Filipino women, and they were a support group. For my mom, there were the comadres who supported each other in the Western Addition, San Francisco. And then one day, she meets a somewhat underemployed, happy-go-lucky Filipino cook, like my dad, buying vegetables. My mom, that the Filipino American story. Your immigrant mom, wherever, whatever country, Philippines, China, Japan, Korea. International Women's Day, mom. Got to think about mom. One other woman I thought about Pasita Abad. I mentioned Pasita Abad because I woke up today and I saw that, International Women's Day. 2 years ago, there was a Google Doodle featuring Pasita Abad, and I didn't realize how famous she was. She was a woman I met in 1994 in Washington, D.C., when I was doing a story for a cable channel I was working for there. And I went to her house. She's a painter. And she had these huge walls of these magnificent paintings. And they were like the entire wall, huge paintings. And later I realized that she's known for these kind of huge paintings, which use a kind of a textured stuffing into the canvas that gives the canvas a kind of three-dimensional quality. And she's known for this. And although I think when I was there, she did a lot in gold, a lot in sort of like my gong here. So she was a pioneering female artist from the Philippines who also suffered politically because her parents were targeted by the Marcos dictatorship, and they had some issues, and she had to leave the country. They had to leave the country. So her life was not without some distress, but not enough to extinguish her art. Pasita Abad. I remember her on International Women's Day. So I have my mom and my non-mom. You get two choices, right? And one last thing. I mentioned this story because I saw it in the New Yorker. This is flipped to the New Yorker, digital version. They did a whole story on Lowell High School. Now, this is important if, because Lowell High School is the Asian American high school. It's like 40, 50%. Some people think it should be 70%. I think when it gets over 50%, I think you got to look at how people are admitted, and you got to look at how to make things a little more diverse. They came up with a way at the San Francisco School Board, which was to take away the cachet of being an all academic magnet school and just making Lowell not one based on test scores, but one that was based on lottery. I was against this as an alum because, first of all, a lottery, what does a lottery say? A lottery is luck. Why cast your fate to luck when you're smart enough to maybe try to do something about the inequities in education? I mean, intentionally. And this is really going back. You have to go back not just to like 8th grade to figure out why 9th grade they didn't qualify for Lowell or get the right grades. You got to go back to kindergarten. This is the thing. You got to go back. You got to look K through 8, and then you have to look at housing and why the housing is segregated. Then you have to look at employment and why labor is so screwed up. I mean, this is all societal, but it's the only way that you're going to fix the things that people gripe about Lowell High School. Because right now, Lowell High School does fit a need in the public school system for people who believe in public school, who are too poor to go into private school, but who deserve, need, and want the best possible education available in the public school realm. And that's to the magnets. So it hurt me when they took Lowell apart and said, okay, we're just going to make it into a regular school. But what do you do with the kids who get there? And then you get rid of everything special about Lowell. So they got rid of I'm not sure if all the AP classes were taken away, but certainly the monies that the AP classes brought to the district and that were distributed to Lowell, paid for extra time to the teachers, that's gone. And so over the last couple of weeks, there's been a budget crisis that the school district and the teachers union had to fight over. And the upshot now is Lowell's going to lose money. The school district's going to lose money. And all those kids who are now at Lowell because they won the lottery aren't going to have the kind of resources they need to succeed at Lowell. Which really hurt me when I read that article, because there were some teachers who wanted to make it work. Even though it wasn't an all academic school, they were going to make it work. They were going to make If you were going there and you weren't, you'll get it eventually. You might not get it the first time. It'll be harder, but you're going to get it because a teacher cares, a community cares, and hopefully your parents who said enter the lottery to go to Lowell, hopefully they'll care. And so we have, as they say, takes a village. Now we got the village. Now we got something really special. And this should be happening at every school district, this kind of community, this symbiotic kind of thing where it's all coming together to help the students of the community. Right? It was kind of exciting to read what was going on with some teachers. But then the unions came in and said, look, I've got this issue with money and the AP classes, and Lowell's going to be cut back. And now it looks like it's back to a resource issue. And one teacher is quoted as saying, it's hard to go into class and seeing these kids who are now there because of the lottery, like, hey, they won something special, the right to be there, but now they don't have the support needed to make sure they stay. And she said it was hard to not come in and teach without crying. And this is the problem when you try to do things in the name of diversity without really thinking things through, because in the end, it becomes an empty gesture and you end up hurting the people you want to help. I say this as a Lowell alum, as a kid who went to Lowell, who had no opportunity to go to a private school. A kid who, my parents would have been happy if I went to Mission instead of Lowell. But I wanted to go to Lowell. I'll tell you how bad I was. I went to Lowell. I took the easy classes at Lowell. And they were so easy, I begged to get the harder classes. I said, I'm at Lowell. You can't give me these easy classes. And they didn't have room, but they let me in to the class. I got my A's. I did well enough to get into a decent Ivy League college. Starts with an H. I know how important Lowell High School is. Far more important. And yet I know I had issues at Lowell where I didn't feel sometimes like I belonged or I was meant to be there. And I wonder now about those kids who won the lottery and may or may not get the same kind of resources, the same kind of help, the same kind of embrace from the teachers and the community and other students, because a lack of money for the school district. That's public schools. That's a problem. We got to change that. I wish we weren't so far down the road so that we can't talk about that. But no one really is talking about making public schools better. In fact, we had the last Secretary of Education who wants to privatize everything. Anyway, check it out. New Yorker, big takeout on Lowell. It'll make you feel like, what are they doing? I mean, they did it this way because if they did it in a way that would make a difference, they'd have to blow up the entire system. And that is unfortunate. used my swish. You got to use your swish. All good talk shows have a swish. Hey, listen, thank you for being here with me. This is show 260.2. Screwed up on point 1. I had the wrong mic. I had the wrong... I had to fire myself then. So we're here live now. Just another reminder to check out, go to the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund tomorrow at 6 o'clock Pacific, Chelsea Pier. They have a reception. They're going to honor Cal Penn, notably Cal Penn, also the chief guy there at Thomson Reuters. But Cal Penn, he's going to be there. And then if you go to the ALDEF blog, register and check out the situation online. You can actually, it's going to be a hybrid event. I was talking with Executive Director Margaret Fung, emailing her the other day. I said, I didn't even ask her if it's going to be live or totally hybrid or totally online. Everyone's doffing their masks. Hawaii, latest to get rid of the indoor mask requirement. So check it out. ALDEF blog. I'll try to put a link on my Facebook page. It's tomorrow. It's the 9th. It's on Wednesday, which I should have known. Check it out. Don't miss the event. It's a way to give to an organization that has meant a lot to me these last 12 years. When Asian Week closed and my column was looking for a home, there was ALDEF. So, worthy of your support. And that's it. This is Emil Amok's Takeout. My takes on all things considerable. We ask the question, WDAAAT, what does an Asian American think? On this, the micro talk show of the AAPI and the AAXs. Because where else are you going to have a talk show where you can talk about stuff? Or hear someone talk about stuff that matters to you. All 23 million of you. So regular listeners of our show know that this is the portion of the show where if you're feeling a little out of sorts, like I did on show 260.1, which I deleted. This is 260.2. Take this hand here, put it here, take this hand here, just give it a squeeze. You're okay. You're okay. No shame. No shame. You're good. You belong. You're enough. You're enough. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Till tomorrow.